作为改革开放后首个与我国建立合作关系的联合国发展机构，40余年来，联合国开发计划署在扶贫、能源、环保等领域与中国政府深度合作，为推动中国的发展发挥了重要作用。随着中国在经济社会领域的发展水平不断提升，近年来，联合国开发计划署开始将中国的发展经验介绍给其他一些国家。从最初的输入到后来的输出，经历了怎样的过程？未来，联合国开发计划署还将在哪些领域与中国合作，助力推进世界范围内17项可持续发展目标的实现呢？带着这些问题，国际微访谈专访了联合国开发计划署驻华代表白雅婷女士。
This year marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of United Nations, and it has been 41 years since UNDP came to China. What cooperation has the UNDP and Chinese government conducted in the past 40 years, and what achievements were made?
Our cooperation with China has actually developed over these four decades, also mirroring the progress in development that China was making as a country, moving from low income country to middle income and now upper middle income country. In the early days, I think we focused mainly on technology transfers, technical cooperation, modernizing industries, modernizing agriculture, etc. And so one of the earliest projects that we actually had, and few people know this, is looking at the availability of vegetables in the markets, right, and increasing dietary intake of people. So that was end 70s, early 80s. And it was actually UNDP that introduced broccoli to China. And then, of course, in the 2000s, when the world turned to the Millennium Development Goals, we also started looking with China at broadening the understanding of development beyond just poverty reduction, and looking also increasingly at environmental aspects. So for the 12th five-year plan, for example, we provided as UNDP technical advice to the government of China to introduce indicators that can measure progress that go beyond economic growth, to also capture social dimensions of development, such as, for example, social protection. On the environment side, we had programs, for example, that actually transformed the local manufacturing of lighting. And of lighting in public places, because that has very high CO2 emissions, the traditional lighting. So with the type of LED lamps that were introduced and manufactured, China managed actually to save 4.4 million tons in CO2 emissions. So these are just a few examples. Then, of course, moving to 2015, when the world moved to the Sustainable Development Goals, from MDGs to Sustainable Development Goals, this is the current era, of course, that we're in. And I think currently we're really looking, China being now a sophisticated upper middle income country, a country that is in the high human development category. So we're looking increasingly at bringing innovative solutions for the SDGs, and also financing solutions for the SDGs. So we've worked, for example, with Baidu to use big data to complement traditional poverty measures with indicators that can be tracked by big data, such as roads, traffic on roads, or water pipes, water systems. And that's actually very important because it allows to track development progress real time. using big data. So you see there's quite a bit of an evolution of how our support changed with China's changing development context over the 40 years.
Mm-hmm. But you're also introducing the experience of China to some other countries, especially developing countries of the world. For example, taking use of the big data for poverty alleviation, like a targeted poverty alleviation, right?
Yes, indeed. As part of this process, China has lifted 750 million people out of poverty since the opening up. And I think there's quite some interesting experiences to learn from other countries in the world, how China actually managed to do this and managed to lift that amount of people out of poverty. So we are, of course, one of the supporting founding partners, so to speak, to the IPRCC, the International Poverty Reduction Center of China, and that has become a bit of a knowledge hub to share these type of experiences that China has with the world. Absolutely.
We see progress, but we also see a lot of challenges. For example, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of UN in Asia Pacific failed to be met in 2019. And nowadays, the context of COVID-19 is making it even more difficult to meet the 2030 targets. So in what area do you think the UNDP and China should further cooperate to meet the common new challenge of the world?
Absolutely. I mean, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals really remain an uphill battle, so to speak. Even before the pandemic, the world was not on track. Not only Asia Pacific, the entire globe was not on track to meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. If you look at poverty, for example, Goal 1, eradicating extreme poverty, the projection was 6% by 2030. With COVID, that challenge has become even bigger. Now, I think as I was saying before, China's effort in achieving Xiaokang also has to be seen, under that, from that perspective. What the data tells us currently, looking at China in particular, is that it is those who are sort of just above the poverty line who are actually the most vulnerable. UNDP, an assessment of the impact of COVID-19 on 5 poverty counties. And what we're seeing is that especially those in the informal sector workers, which actually represent the majority of employment, are the hardest hit. That's actually the same as globally. And what it means is that we need to improve and widen social protection systems to also include informal sector workers. So that's the type of, I think, new developments that we need to watch to make sure that we protect past gains as we recover from the pandemic. And I think another aspect is also that COVID-19 has demonstrated the importance of addressing climate change and environmental degradation. A pandemic like this, where you have animal to human transmission, is to some extent a result of environmental degradation and us humans encroaching into animal habitat. So protecting the environment, addressing climate change going forward, I think has really been brought also to the forefront by the pandemic. And as UNDP, we will certainly be working with China on these issues.
Thank you for your time, Beate.
Sure, my pleasure.